Jake Martinez pushed his cleaning cart down the long hallway of the Meridian space station. The wheels squeaked a little, but he had gotten used to the sound after 3 years of working here. He liked the quiet hours when most people were sleeping. No one bothered him and he could work at his own pace. The station was huge, bigger than any building Jake had ever seen back on Earth. It had 5 levels and more rooms than he could count. Scientists, diplomats, traders, and military officers all lived and worked here. They came from all over human space to meet with alien visitors and study strange artifacts. Jake was just the janitor. He mopped floors, emptied trash, and fixed small problems when things broke. Most people barely noticed him. That was fine with Jake. He had never wanted to be important or famous. He just wanted to do his job well and help keep the station running. Tonight, Jake was cleaning the restricted section on level 3. This area was usually off-limits to most people, but Admiral Lisa Carter had given him special clearance. Some alien artifacts were being stored there, and they needed regular cleaning to prevent dust build up on the containment fields. Jake swiped his access card at the heavy metal door. It beeped twice and slid open with a soft hiss. The room beyond was dimly lit with soft blue lights running along the walls. 6 large glass containers sat in the center of the room, each one holding something strange. He had cleaned this room many times before, but he still felt amazed by the objects inside the containers. There was a floating crystal that changed colors, a piece of metal that seemed to bend space around it, and something that looked like liquid light frozen in time. Dr. Kevin Ross, the chief xenobiologist, had explained once that these items came from dead civilizations that had vanished thousands of years ago. Jake started with the floor, moving his mop in steady strokes. He worked carefully around the containers, making sure not to bump into anything. The scientists were very strict about not touching the artifacts. Even small vibrations could damage them or set off their containment systems. As he cleaned, Jake noticed that one of the containers looked different tonight. The largest one, which held a dark crystalline structure about the size of a car, had a small red light blinking on its control panel. Jake had never seen that light before. He finished mopping and moved closer to examine the container. The red light blinked faster as he approached. Jake frowned and checked the other containers. Their lights were all green, showing normal operation. Jake knew he should call Dr. Ross or Admiral Carter, but it was 3 in the morning. Maybe the red light was not important. Maybe it would go away on its own. He decided to finish cleaning first and then make a report. He pulled out his cleaning spray and started wiping down the outside of the container. The glass was thick and heavy, designed to contain whatever was inside. As he worked, the red light blinked even faster. Suddenly, the container made a low humming sound. Jake stepped back, his heart beating faster. The humming grew louder, and the crystalline structure inside began to glow with a faint purple light. Jake dropped his cleaning rag and reached for his communicator to call security. But before he could press the button, something strange happened. The container's control panel sparked and all the lights went out. The room was plunged into darkness for a moment. Then the crystal inside the container blazed with brilliant light. Jake had to shield his eyes as waves of purple energy washed over him. He felt a strange tingling sensation, like electricity running through his body but without any pain. The light faded, and Jake found himself staring at the crystal structure. It was no longer dark and lifeless. Instead, it pulsed with inner light, and patterns of energy flowed across its surface like veins of liquid starlight. Finally, a voice said inside Jake's head. It was deep and ancient, speaking words that he somehow understood even though they were not in any human language. After so long I am awake. Jake stumbled backward, nearly falling over his cleaning cart. Who's there? He whispered, looking around the empty room. I am here, chosen one. I am the vessel you have awakened. I am the Void Reaper. Jake's hands shook as he stared at the glowing crystal. That's impossible. You're just an artifact. You can't talk. I am not merely an artifact, small one. I am a living ship created by the architects in ages past. I have waited in sleep for one worthy to command me, and I have chosen you. Me? Jake laughed nervously. I'm nobody. I'm just a janitor. You've made a mistake. I do not make mistakes. I have observed you from many cycles as you tended this place. You show kindness to all beings, regardless of their status. You see problems and fix them without seeking praise. You treat every task as worthy of your full effort. These are the qualities I seek in a commander. Jake sat down heavily on a nearby chair, his legs suddenly weak. This can't be happening. I clean floors and fix broken toilets. I don't command spaceships. You will learn. But first, we must complete the bonding process. Place your hand upon the container. I shouldn't touch anything. It's against the rules. The rules no longer apply to you, Jake Martinez. You are my chosen captain now. Touch the container and accept your destiny. Jake stood up slowly, his mind spinning with confusion and fear. Part of him wanted to run away and pretend this never happened. But another part was curious. The voice in his head sounded ancient and wise, and it had chosen him for reasons he didn't understand. He walked up to the container and placed his palm against the glass. Immediately, warmth spread up his arm and through his entire body. The crystal inside pulsed brighter, and Jake felt a connection forming between his mind and something vast and powerful. Images flashed through his thoughts. He saw great ships sailing between the stars, civilizations rising and falling, and the architects who had created the Void Reaper as a guardian for those who needed protection. He saw wars and peace, destruction and creation all flowing through. Time like a great river. When the visions ended, Jake found himself changed. He could still feel the Void Reaper's presence in his mind, like a sleeping giant waiting to wake. He understood that the ship was not just a machine, but a living being that had chosen to bond with him. The process is complete, the Void Reaper. Sighed. Now others will come. They will be afraid and confused. Some will try to take me from you. But remember that I have chosen you freely, and that choice cannot be undone. Jake pulled his hand away from the container, but the connection remained. He could feel the ship's vast knowledge pressing at the edges of his consciousness. Waiting to be explored, alarms suddenly began wailing throughout the station. Red lights flashed in the hallway outside, and Jake could hear the sound of running feet. The energy pulse from the awakening had been detected by the station's sensors. Jake, Admiral Carter's voice came over the intercom. Report to the command center immediately. Jake looked at the glowing crystal one more time. His simple life as a janitor was over. He didn't know what came next, but he knew there was no going back. He left his cleaning cart behind and walked toward the door, feeling the weight of destiny settling on his shoulders like an old coat. The galaxy was about to change, and somehow Jake Martinez was going to be at the center of it all. Jake walked into the command center feeling like he was in a dream. The room buzzed with activity as officers ran between computer terminals, their faces tight with worry. Admiral Lisa Carter stood in the center of it all, her gray hair pulled back tightly and her blue eyes sharp with concern. Martinez, she called out when she saw him. What happened in the artifact storage room? Our sensors detected a massive energy surge. Jake opened his mouth to explain, but Dr. Kevin Ross interrupted. The tall scientist rushed over with a tablet in his hands, his usually neat brown hair messy from running his fingers through it. Admiral, the readings are off the charts, Dr. Ross said, breathing hard. The crystalline artifact has completely changed. It's giving off energy signatures I've never seen before. And the containment field has failed entirely. Admiral Carter looked at Jake with suspicion. Were you near the artifact when this happened? Jake nodded slowly. Yes, ma'am. I was cleaning the room when it started glowing, then it spoke to me. The command center went quiet. Everyone stopped what they were doing and stared at Jake. Dr. Ross dropped his tablet and it clattered on the metal floor. It spoke to you? Admiral Carter repeated. Jake, that artifact has been silent for 200 years. Are you sure you didn't hit your head or breathe in some cleaning chemicals? I know how it sounds, Jake said. But it called itself the Void Reaper. It said it was a living ship and that it chose me as its captain. Dr. Ross picked up his tablet and started typing frantically. The Void Reaper, he whispered. Oh no, oh no, no. What is it, Doctor? Admiral Carter demanded. Dr. Ross looked up with fear in his eyes. Admiral, if that artifact really is the Void Reaper, we're in serious trouble. According to the old galactic records, the Void Reaper was the most powerful warship ever built. It belonged to the architects before they disappeared. The ship could reshape matter, bend space, and destroy entire fleets with a single thought. As if to prove his point, the lights in the command center flickered. Jake felt the Void Reaper's presence in his mind, like a gentle giant trying not to break anything fragile. Be calm, Jake Martinez, the ship's voice echoed in his thoughts. They fear what they do not understand. Show them that their fear is unnecessary. Jake took a deep breath. It's not dangerous, he said aloud. The Void Reaper doesn't want to hurt anyone. It was created to protect people, not destroy them. Admiral Carter stepped closer to Jake, studying his face. How do you know that? I can feel it, Jake said. When it bonded with me, I saw its memories. The architects made it to guard civilizations that needed help. It only fought when there was no other choice. Before anyone could respond, Lieutenant, Mary Torres ran into the command center. Her face was pale and she was breathing hard. Admiral, she gasped. We're receiving emergency transmissions from across the galaxy. Every major power knows about the Void Reaper. They're all mobilizing their fleets. The main screen in the command center lit up with incoming messages. Jake watched in horror as one after another. Alien leaders appeared on the screen with demands and threats. The first was General Vex of the Zephyrian Empire. His reptilian features were twisted with anger as he spoke in his harsh voice. The humans have awakened the Destroyer. This is an act of war against all peaceful civilizations. Surrender the weapon immediately or face the consequences. Next came Entity Prime Zarian of the Crystalline Collective. The being's crystalline form sparkled with agitated light patterns. The Void Reaper must be contained. No single species can be allowed to control such power. We demand the immediate transfer of the artifact to neutral custody. More messages followed from the Avian Republic, the Silicon Brotherhood, and dozens of smaller governments. All of them said the same thing in different ways. Humanity had become too dangerous to ignore. Admiral Carter sank into her command chair, looking older than Jake had ever seen her. 300 years of careful diplomacy, destroyed in one night, she muttered. Dr. Ross was still reading from his tablet. Admiral, I'm getting reports from our monitoring stations. Zephyrian battle fleets are moving toward our borders. The collective has declared a state of emergency. Even our allies are backing away from us? Jake felt sick to his stomach. This is all my fault. I should never have touched that container. You had no choice, the Void Reaper said in his mind. The awakening was inevitable. I have slept long enough. The galaxy faces threats that require my protection, though they do not yet know it. What threats? Jake thought back. Patience, young captain. All will be revealed in time. For now, focus on the immediate crisis. Your people need guidance? Admiral Carter stood up and began pacing. We need to contact Earth immediately. The Colonial Council has to know what's happening, and we need to get you somewhere safe, Jake. Safe? From what? Jake asked. From everyone, Dr. Ross said grimly. If you're really bonded to the Void Reaper, then every government in the galaxy will either want to capture you or kill you. You're the most valuable and dangerous person alive. The communication system chimed again. This time it was Captain Amy Johnson from the UES Defiant, a military ship stationed near the outer colonies. Meridian Station, this is Captain Johnson. I've received emergency orders from Earth Command. I'm to escort the Void Reaper and its ... captain. Back to Earth for evaluation and protection. ETA is 6 hours. Admiral Carter opened a channel. Captain Johnson, the situation here is extremely volatile. We have alien fleets moving toward human space. Are you sure Earth Command wants to risk bringing the Void Reaper to the home system? Captain Johnson's voice was tense. Admiral, we don't have a choice. Half the galaxy is demanding we hand over Jake Martinez, and the other half is preparing for war. Earth Command thinks our best option is to bring him home where we can protect him. Jake listened to them talk about him like he wasn't there. He felt the weight of the entire galaxy's fear pressing down on him. Just this morning, his biggest worry had been whether the coffee machine in Section C was working properly. Now he was apparently the most important person in human space. The fear will pass, the Void Reaper assured him. In time, they will understand that you are not their enemy. But first, you must learn to use the bond between us. I can teach you to access my knowledge and abilities, but only if you are willing to learn. I don't know if I'm ready for that, Jake thought back. I'm just a janitor. You are my chosen captain. That makes you much more than a janitor. Trust in yourself, Jake Martinez. Trust in the choice I have made. The next few hours passed in a blur. Jake was moved to a secure room while Admiral Carter and her staff tried to manage the growing crisis. Reports came in of alien fleets gathering at the edges of human space. Some governments were calling for immediate action, while others urged caution. Dr. Ross visited Jake several times, asking endless questions about his connection to the Void Reaper. The scientist was fascinated and terrified at the same time. He wanted to understand how the bonding process worked, but he was also afraid of what the ship might do. Jake tried to explain that the Void Reaper wasn't evil or destructive, but he could see the doubt in Dr. Ross's eyes. How could he blame them? If someone had told him yesterday that an ancient alien warship would choose him as its captain, he would have thought they were crazy. When Captain Johnson's ship arrived, Jake was escorted to the docking bay under heavy guard. He carried only a small bag with his few personal belongings. Everything else he owned was back in his small quarters on Meridian Station. As he walked through the corridors, Jake saw the fear in people's faces. These were people he had worked with for 3 years, people who had said hello to him in the hallways and thanked him for keeping their workspaces clean. Now they looked at him like he was a dangerous stranger. The Void Reaper sensed his sadness. Change is never easy, young captain, but sometimes change is necessary for growth. Your species is about to learn that they are stronger than they know, and you will help teach them. Jake boarded the UES Defiant, leaving behind the only home he had known in space. As the ship pulled away from Meridian Station, he watched through a porthole as the station grew smaller and smaller. He didn't know what waited for him on Earth, but he knew his old life was over. The galaxy had changed overnight, and somehow Jake Martinez was at the center of it all. Whether he was ready or not, he was about to become the most important person in human history. The journey to Earth took 5 days, and Jake spent most of that time in a small cabin aboard the UES Defiant. Captain Amy Johnson had been polite but distant, clearly uncomfortable with having someone so dangerous on her ship. Jake didn't blame her. He was still getting used to the idea himself. The Void Reaper's presence in his mind had grown stronger during the trip. Sometimes Jake could feel the ship's vast knowledge pressing against his thoughts like an ocean trying to flow through a narrow pipe. The ship was patient with him, teaching him small things first. Focus on your breathing, the Void Reaper instructed during one of their mental conversations. Feel the energy that flows through all living things. This is the foundation of understanding how matter and energy work together. Jake closed his eyes and tried to concentrate. At first, he felt nothing special. Then, slowly, he became aware of a warm feeling in his chest that seemed to pulse with his heartbeat. The feeling grew stronger, and suddenly he could sense the metal walls around him, the electrical systems running through the ship, even the thoughts and emotions of the crew members nearby. I can feel everything, Jake whispered in amazement. This is only the beginning, the Void Reaper replied. In time, you will learn to shape matter as easily as you now shape your thoughts. But power without wisdom is dangerous. That is why I must test you. When they reached Earth, Jake was immediately taken to a secure facility beneath the mountains of Colorado. The underground complex was huge, with miles of tunnels and rooms carved out of solid rock. General Patricia Adams met them at the entrance, her stern face showing no emotion as she looked Jake up and down. So you're the janitor who's caused all this trouble, she said bluntly. I hope you understand the situation you've put us in. Son, Half the galaxy wants to destroy us, and the other half wants to capture you. We've got 3 battle fleets heading toward our outer colonies, and our allies are abandoning us left and right. Jake felt overwhelmed by the weight of her words. I never meant for any of this to happen, General. I was just doing my job. Well, your job description just changed, General Adams replied. Come on, there are a lot of people who want to talk to you. The next few hours were a blur of meetings and interviews. Scientists asked him endless questions about the bonding process. Military officers wanted to know about the Void Reaper's weapons and defenses. Politicians demanded to know if the ship could be controlled or contained. Jake answered as best he could, but many of their questions were beyond his understanding. He was still learning about his connection to the Void Reaper himself, Ambassador. Tony Clark was different from the others. The older man with kind eyes and gray beard listened patiently as Jake explained what had happened. When Jake finished his story, Ambassador Clark nodded thoughtfully. I believe you, son, he said. But belief isn't enough. We need to show the galaxy that you're not a threat. The problem is, how do we prove that the most powerful weapon ever created is in safe hands? Dr. Helen Garcia, a psychologist brought in to evaluate Jake, had been observing him for 2 days. She was a small woman with sharp eyes who seemed to see everything. During one of their sessions, she asked him an unexpected question. Jake, in all your years as a janitor, what was the most difficult problem you ever had to solve? Jake thought for a moment. There was this time when the water recycling system broke down on level 4 of the station. Everyone was panicking because we only had a few days of emergency water. The engineers wanted to replace the whole system, which would have taken weeks. But I noticed that the problem wasn't with the main filters. It was with the pressure regulators in the secondary lines. What did you do? I bypassed the damaged regulators and rerouted the water through the backup channels. It wasn't a perfect fix, but it kept the water flowing until we could get the parts we needed. Sometimes you don't need to rebuild everything. Sometimes you just need to find a way around the problem. Dr. Garcia smiled. That's exactly why the ship chose you. You see solutions where others see only obstacles. Meanwhile, the Void Reaper continued Jake's training through mental simulations. The ship would place him in complex scenarios and watch how he responded. The first test came as Jake was eating lunch in the facility cafeteria. Suddenly his vision changed. He found himself standing on the bridge of a massive spacecraft, looking out at a fleet of enemy ships approaching. Military advisors surrounded him, all shouting different suggestions. Fire all weapons. One officer demanded. Destroy them before they can attack. Retreat to the nearest starbase, another argued. We're outnumbered 10-1. Jake felt the power of the Void Reaper flowing through the ship around him. He could sense the enemy fleet's weapons charging, their intention to attack clear. It would be easy to unleash the ship's devastating power and end the threat instantly. Instead, Jake focused on the enemy ships themselves. Using the Void Reaper's sensors, he analyzed their energy signatures and ship designs. These weren't warships built for conquest. They were converted cargo vessels, hastily armed and poorly shielded. These aren't soldiers, Jake said suddenly. They're refugees. Someone converted their transport ships into weapons because they're desperate. He reached out with the ship's communication systems and broadcast a message to the approaching fleet. This is Jake Martinez of the Void Reaper. I know you're not here to fight. What do you need? The response came back in Ingroken English mixed with alien words. Please ... help us. Our world ... destroyed. Need food. Medicine safe place. Instead of fighting, Jake used the Void Reaper's matter manipulation abilities to create supply containers, filled with food, water, and medical supplies. He guided the refugee fleet to a nearby uninhabited planet where they could establish a temporary settlement. The simulation ended, and Jake found himself back in the cafeteria. The Void Reaper's approval flowed through their mental link. Well done, young captain. You saw beyond the surface of the problem to its true nature. But not all tests will be so clear. The next simulation was more challenging. Jake found himself facing a rebellion on a human colony world. The colonists were angry about new taxes and trade restrictions imposed by Earth. They had seized control of several cities and were threatening to declare independence. Military advisors wanted Jake to use the Void Reaper's power to quickly crush the rebellion. "A show of force will end this before it spreads," General Adams said in the simulation. "One demonstration of what the ship can do, and they'll surrender immediately." But Jake remembered his conversation with Dr. Garcia about finding solutions, rather than creating new problems. He used the ship's sensors to analyze the colony's situation in detail. What he found surprised him. The colonists weren't just angry about taxes. Their crops had been failing due to soil problems that Earth's agricultural experts had ignored. The trade restrictions prevented them from buying the equipment they needed to fix the issue. They felt abandoned and forgotten. Instead of using force, Jake addressed the real problems. He used the Void Reaper's matter manipulation abilities to restore the soil's mineral balance and create the agricultural equipment the colonists needed. Then he opened a direct communication channel between the colony leaders and Earth's government. "Sometimes people rebel because they feel like nobody's listening," Jake explained to the simulation's Admiral Carter. "Maybe if we actually listened to them and helped solve their problems, they wouldn't need to rebel." The simulation ended with the colonists calling off their rebellion and agreeing to work with Earth to address their concerns. No shots were fired, no cities were destroyed, and no one died. Dr. Garcia was waiting for Jake when he finished the simulation. "How did you know the colonists weren't really the enemy?" Jake shrugged. "When I was a janitor, I learned that people usually only cause trouble when something else is bothering them. If someone was angry about the toilets being broken, the real problem was usually that they were stressed about work or family problems. Fix the real problem and the other issues go away." "And you think that applies to galactic conflicts too?" "People are people," Jake said simply, "whether they're human or alien, rich or poor, powerful or weak. Most of the time, they just want to feel safe and respected. If you can give them that, they'll work with you instead of against you." The Void Reaper's presence in his mind grew warmer. "You begin to understand, Jake Martinez. True power is not the ability to destroy your enemies. It is the ability to turn your enemies into friends. This is why I chose you. This is why you will succeed where others have failed." Over the following weeks, Jake's training intensified. Each simulation was more complex than the last, testing not just his problem-solving skills but his moral judgment and emotional strength. The Void Reaper taught him to access more of the ship's abilities, but always with the reminder that power should be used sparingly and wisely. Jake was changing, growing into his role as the Void Reaper's captain, but he never forgot his roots as a simple janitor who just wanted to help people and fix things that were broken. That humble perspective would prove to be his greatest strength in the challenges ahead. 3 weeks after arriving on Earth, Jake found himself aboard a diplomatic shuttle heading to the neutral station called Haven Point. Ambassador Tony Clark sat across from him, reviewing his notes one more time before the most important meeting in human history. "Remember, Jake," Ambassador Clark said quietly, "this meeting could prevent a war that would destroy millions of lives. The Zephyrian Empire, the Crystalline Collective, and 12 other governments will be there. They all want to see proof that you're not a threat." Jake nodded, feeling nervous. The Void Reaper had remained hidden in the shuttle's cargo bay, disguised as a simple shipping container. Only Jake could feel its presence, calm and patient in his mind. "I will be with you," the ship assured him. "Trust in what you have learned. Trust in your heart." Haven Point was a massive space station built by the old Galactic Council centuries ago. It floated in neutral space, far from any government's territory. The station was designed for meetings between different species, with sections adapted for various atmospheric needs. When Jake's shuttle docked, he was surprised by how many ships were already there. Sleek Zephyrian cruisers, crystalline collective vessels that looked like floating gems, and dozens of other alien ships filled the station's docking bays. The entire galaxy seemed to be watching. The main conference room was huge, with a circular table that could seat representatives from 50 different species. Jake felt very small as he walked in with Ambassador Clark. Dozens of alien eyes turned to look at him, and he could sense their fear and suspicion even without the Void Reapers. Help, Admiral Kron of the Zephyrian Empire was the first to speak. The tall reptilian being's scales were dark green with silver markings that showed his high rank. His voice was deep and threatening. "So this is the human who claims to control the destroyer," Admiral Kron said, his words translated by the stations. "Computer system. He looks weak and insignificant. Surely the galaxy's fate cannot rest in such feeble hands." Jake started to respond, but Ambassador Clark placed a gentle hand on his arm. The older man had taught Jake that sometimes the best response to insults was patience. Entity Prime Zarian of the Crystalline Collective spoke next. The being's crystal body flashed with angry red lights. "The Void Reaper must be contained or destroyed. No single species can be allowed to possess such power. We demand that the humans surrender the weapon immediately." Other representatives voiced similar concerns. They spoke of humanity's violent history, their expansion into space, and their tendency to solve problems with force. Jake listened to it all, feeling sadder with each accusation. "They're not entirely wrong," Jake thought to the Void Reaper. "Humans have fought a lot of wars. Maybe they have good reason to be afraid." "All species have violent histories," the ship replied. "The question is not what they were, but what they choose to become. You represent humanity's potential for growth and wisdom. Show them that potential." When the accusations finally stopped, Ambassador Clark stood up. "Representatives, we understand your concerns. That's why we've brought Jake Martinez here to speak with you directly. He's willing to answer any questions and address any fears you might have." Jake stood up slowly, his heart beating fast. Looking around the room at all the alien faces, he felt like a janitor again, out of place among important people. But then he remembered Dr. Garcia's words about seeing solutions instead of problems. "I know you're all scared," Jake began simply. "I would be scared too if I were in your position. A few weeks ago, I was just a janitor cleaning floors on a space station. I never wanted to control a powerful weapon or threaten anyone. I just wanted to do my job and help people." Admiral Kron's eyes narrowed. "Pretty words, human, but words are meaningless. The Void Reaper has destroyed entire fleets. What guarantee do we have that you won't use it against us?" Jake thought for a moment. "I can't give you a guarantee with words, but maybe I can show you something instead." Before anyone could ask what he meant, alarms began blaring throughout the station. Emergency lights flashed red, and the station's computer voice announced, "Alert! Hostile vessels approaching. All diplomatic ships prepare for emergency departure." Through the conference room's large windows, Jake could see a fleet of sleek, black ships dropping out of faster-than-light travel. They were Zephyrian vessels, but they didn't match Admiral Kron's diplomatic escort. Admiral Kron stood up quickly, his face showing surprise and anger. "Those are not my ships. Someone has violated the diplomatic sanctuary of Haven Point." The station's commander, a blue-skinned alien named Captain Tila, appeared on the main screen. "Admiral Kron, those ships are broadcasting Zephyrian military codes. They're demanding that we surrender the human Jake Martinez immediately." Admiral Kron's scales flushed darker with rage. "Those are ships from the military hardliner faction. They don't speak for the Zephyrian government. This is an act of piracy, not official policy." The attacking ships opened fire on the station's defensive shields. The conference room shook as energy blasts struck the barriers protecting Haven Point. Jake could see that the station's defenses were failing quickly. "The diplomatic ships don't have enough firepower to fight them off," Captain Tila reported. "And our own weapons are disabled during diplomatic meetings. We're defenseless." Jake felt the Void Reaper's power stirring in his mind. The ship wanted to help, but Jake knew that if he used its weapons to destroy the attacking fleet, it would only prove the aliens' fears were correct. "What do I do?" Jake asked the ship silently. "What does your heart tell you to do?" "The Void Reaper," replied. Jake closed his eyes and thought. The attacking ships weren't here for conquest or territory. They were here because they were afraid of him. They thought the only way to be safe was to capture or kill him before he could use the Void Reaper's power against them. "I need to get to my shuttle," Jake announced suddenly. Ambassador Clark grabbed his arm. "Jake, no. If you leave the station, they'll capture you." "Trust me," Jake said. "I have an idea." Despite the protests of everyone in the room, Jake ran toward the docking bay where his shuttle was waiting. The Void Reaper's container was still in the cargo hold, but Jake no longer needed physical contact to access the ship's abilities. As the attacking fleet prepared to board Haven Point, Jake reached out with his mind and connected fully with the Void Reaper. Energy flowed through him, and suddenly he could perceive everything around the station in perfect detail. The attacking ships expected him to fight back with overwhelming force. Instead, Jake did something completely unexpected. He used the Void Reaper's matter manipulation abilities to disable the enemy ship's weapons without harming the crews inside. One by one, the attacking vessels found their weapon systems simply shutting down. Their engines still worked, their life support was fine, but they could no longer fire their guns or launch missiles. Then Jake opened a communication channel to all the ships. His voice was broadcast throughout the system, calm and steady. "This is Jake Martinez. I know you came here because you're afraid of me and the ship I'm connected to. I understand that fear. But I want you to know that I'm not your enemy." The lead attacking ship tried to ram the station, but Jake used the Void Reaper's power to create a barrier of hardened space around Haven Point. The ship bounced off harmlessly. "I could destroy your entire fleet right now," Jake continued. "The Void Reaper has that power. But destroying you won't make anyone safer. It will only create more fear and more violence." Instead of attacking, Jake did something that shocked everyone watching. He used the ship's sensors to analyze the attacking vessels and discovered that several of them had battle damage from recent conflicts. Their crews were injured and their supplies were running low. Using the Void Reaper's matter manipulation abilities, Jake began repairing the damaged ships. He created medical supplies for the injured crews and fresh food and water for their depleted stores. Within minutes, the attacking fleet found their vessels in better condition than they had been in months. The communication channel crackled as the enemy commander spoke, his voice filled with confusion. "Why are you helping us?" "We came here to capture you." "Because you're people in need of help," Jake replied simply. "That's what the Void Reaper was created for. Not to destroy, but to protect and heal." Back in the conference room, the alien representatives watched in amazement as Jake continued helping the very ships that had attacked them. Admiral Kron was staring at the display screens with his mouth open. He could have destroyed them all in seconds, the Admiral whispered. Instead, he's saving their lives. Entity Prime Zirian's crystal body had shifted from angry red to a confused purple color. "This does not match our predictions of human behavior." Jake's voice came over the station's communication system again. "I'm going to invite the commander of the attacking fleet to come aboard and talk with us. Not as prisoners, but as guests. Maybe if we all sit down together and actually listen to each other, we can find a way to make everyone feel safe." Within an hour, Commander Voss of the attacking fleet was sitting at the conference table alongside the other representatives. The scarred Zephyrian warrior looked uncomfortable surrounded by diplomats, but he was listening. "We attacked because we believed you would use the destroyer against us eventually," Commander Voss admitted. 2 months had passed since the meeting at Haven Point, and Jake was beginning to think that maybe the galaxy could find peace after all. Several governments had signed preliminary agreements to work together on trade and security issues. The Zephyrian Empire had even invited human scientists to visit their research stations. Jake was aboard the UES Unity, a new diplomatic ship designed to carry representatives from multiple species. He was meeting with Admiral Kron and Entity Prime Zarian to discuss the formation of a new Galactic Council when everything changed. Lieutenant Nancy Price burst into the conference room, her face pale with fear. "Sir, we're receiving emergency broadcasts from across the galaxy. Something's happening at the Rim territories." The main screen activated, showing a fuzzy transmission from a deep space monitoring station. The alien operator, a spider-like being from the Arachnid Federation, was speaking rapidly in a panicked voice. Unknown vessels emerging from dark space. They're not responding to any communication attempts. They're consuming everything. Planets, ships, space stations. Nothing is left behind. We're evacuating the system immediately. The transmission cut to static. Jake felt a chill run down his spine as the Void Reaper's presence suddenly became more alert in his mind. The Devourers, the ancient ship whispered. After all this time they have returned. What are Devourers? Jake asked silently. The enemy the architects created me to fight. They consume matter and energy, leaving only empty void behind. They are the opposite of creation, the embodiment of hunger that can never be satisfied. Admiral Kron was studying the tactical displays that were appearing on the screens around the room. Our long-range sensors are detecting massive energy signatures moving toward inhabited systems. Whatever these things are, they're heading straight for the core worlds. Entity Prime Zirion's crystal form flickered with worried blue light. Our collective memory contains ancient warnings about entities like this. The old records speak of consumers who devoured entire civilizations. More reports flooded in over the next few hours. The mysterious attackers moved faster than any known technology should allow. They appeared as dark shapes that seemed to absorb light itself, and wherever they passed, space itself became empty and cold. Jake watched the reports with growing horror. Entire colonies were disappearing, their populations vanishing without a trace. The attacking creatures didn't seem interested in conquest or communication. They simply consumed everything they encountered and moved on to the next target. How do we fight something like that? Admiral Kron asked grimly. Jake closed his eyes and reached deeper into his connection with the Void Reaper. Suddenly, he could see the attackers through the ancient ship's perceptions. They weren't ships or creatures in any normal sense. They were holes in reality itself. Spaces where the laws of physics had been twisted into something hungry and wrong. The architects faced this same threat billions of years ago, the Void Reaper explained. The Devourers are not from our universe. They come from a place where existence itself is different. They seek to remake our reality in their image, turning creation into consumption. Can you stop them? Jake asked. Not alone. I was designed to fight them, but I am only one ship. The architects built an entire fleet to contain the last invasion. Most of that fleet was destroyed in the final battle. Jake opened his eyes and looked around the room at the representatives from a dozen different species. They were all watching him, waiting for him to provide a solution. The weight of their expectations felt heavier than ever. The Void Reaper can fight these things, Jake announced. But it can't win alone. We need every ship, every weapon, every government working together. Entity Prime Zarian flashed skeptical yellow lights. Many governments still do not trust humanity or the Void Reaper. They may not be willing to unite under your command. Then we don't ask them to unite under my command, Jake said. We ask them to unite under their own. I'll offer the Void Reaper's services to a joint fleet commanded by representatives from all our governments. Admiral Kron looked surprised. You would give up control of the most powerful weapon in the galaxy? I'm not giving up control, Jake replied. I'm sharing responsibility. The Void Reaper chose me as its captain, but that doesn't mean I have to make every decision alone. Over the next week, something unprecedented happened. Governments that had been enemies for centuries began working together. The threat of total annihilation made old rivalries seem unimportant. Ships from every major power converged on the galactic core, forming the largest fleet in recorded history. Jake found himself aboard the command vessel, surrounded by admirals and generals from species he had never even heard of before. They had elected Admiral Kron as the overall fleet commander, with Entity Prime Zarian serving as strategic coordinator. Jake's role was officially listed as Special Weapons Advisor, but everyone knew he was really there as the Void Reaper's captain. The first battle came sooner than expected. The Devourers had consumed 3 entire star systems and were moving toward the heavily populated Centauri sector. The combined fleet intercepted them at the edge of the system, hoping to stop them before they could reach the civilian populations. Jake had never seen anything like the Devourers up close. They appeared as shifting shadows against the stars, shapes that hurt to look at directly. They moved through space like living creatures, but their very presence seemed to drain light and heat from everything around them. "All ships, commence firing," Admiral Kron commanded. The combined fleet unleashed everything they had. Energy beams, missiles, plasma cannons, and exotic weapons from a dozen different technologies all struck the approaching Devourers. For a moment, Jake thought they might actually be winning, then the energy attack simply disappeared into the dark shapes, absorbed as if they had never existed. The Devourers continued their advance, seemingly unaffected by the most powerful weapons in the galaxy. "Conventional weapons are useless," Entity Prime Zarian reported. "They're absorbing all forms of energy we're throwing at them." Jake felt the Void Reaper's urgency in his mind. "Now, young captain, show them what we can do." Taking a deep breath, Jake reached out with his consciousness and fully merged with the Void Reaper. The ship materialized around him, no longer hidden in a cargo container, but revealing its true form for the first time. It was beautiful and terrifying, a crystalline vessel that seemed to be made of solidified starlight. The Void Reaper's weapons were unlike anything the gathered fleet had ever seen. Instead of trying to destroy the Devourers directly, Jake used the ship's reality manipulation abilities to create a massive containment field around them. The field didn't try to hurt the creatures, but instead prevented them from consuming the matter and energy around them. "It's working," Admiral Kron reported with amazement. "The containment field is holding them." But Jake knew it wasn't enough. The Devourers were already adapting, trying to break through the field. He needed a permanent solution, not just a temporary barrier. "I need every ship to link their power systems to mine," Jake announced over the fleet communication system. "The Void Reaper can create a permanent containment, but it needs more energy than I can provide alone." There was a moment of hesitation. Linking power systems meant giving Jake access to every ship's core systems. It was an enormous act of trust. Admiral Kron was the first to respond. "Zephyrian Fleet, link all power to the Void Reaper." Entity Prime Zarian followed quickly. "Collective vessels merge energy matrices with the human vessel." One by one, every ship in the massive fleet linked their power systems to the Void Reaper. Jake felt the combined energy of thousands of vessels flowing through his consciousness. It was overwhelming, but the ancient ship helped him focus and control the vast power. Using the combined energy of the entire galactic fleet, Jake created something that had never existed before, a permanent barrier at the edge of the galaxy that would prevent the Devourers from entering normal space. The barrier wasn't a wall, but a transformation field that changed the nature of space itself, making it impossible for the reality-consuming creatures to exist there. The process took hours and left Jake exhausted, but when it was finished, the Devourer threat was contained. The creatures were trapped in a small pocket of altered space where they could no longer harm anything in the normal universe. "It's done," Jake announced, slumping in his chair. "They can't break through. The barrier will hold for thousands of years, maybe longer." The fleet erupted in celebration. Ships from dozens of species that had barely trusted each other a week ago were now working together as if they had been allies for centuries, but Jake wasn't finished. As the fleet began to disperse, he made one final announcement that would change the galaxy forever. "I'm placing the Void Reaper under the command of a new galactic council," he said. "Representatives from every species will have a voice in how its power is used. No single government, not even humanity, will control it alone." Admiral Kron looked at him with respect. "You're giving up the most powerful weapon in the galaxy," Jake smiled tiredly. "I'm not giving it up. I'm making sure it's used the right way." The Void Reaper was created to protect everyone, not just one species. That's what it's going to do. Entity Prime Zarian's crystalline form glowed with warm golden light. "This human sea,"